Like if you go into a Starbucks, we go into a Starbucks and you can observe somebody in a suit, the people that work in there. And this, I've seen this at lots of different Starbucks all around. People that go in suits, the people that work at Starbucks see them as an authority.
Interesting.
Gray hair, of course, a lot of people will see that to a certain situation. I remember one altercation that I kept happening once. And I'm not going to go into the full altercation, but it was an African-American man. I think I had talked about this before. It was an African-American man, but the lady sided with the older white guy because he was an elder, and she was like from someplace in Africa. But she sided with him because he was an elder.
For sure.
So there's a lot of sometimes and me only clinging on the three things I can do. I can observe the room and I can influence the room in a certain way or I can pay attention to something. And I just read it a quick situation. I mean, I'd pretty much seen her for a while, didn't think of where she was, but when that thing happened, I was like, oh, she sees him as an elder. That's why she agreed with him, because I was trying to observe what was really going on with it. I'm not men bad, women good, certain race good, certain races bad. I just don't, I'm not wired that way. I have a knee-jerk response to something like that. But in those realms, like say, I was like, oh, okay, say there's an attractive woman, like most people will side with her. I'll sit back and I'll say, okay, there's an attractive woman. I might have the propensity to side with her, so let me make sure that she's in the right.
Deeper level of
deeper reverence. Okay, this guy's yelling. He's kind of being a jerk, but he doesn't deserve to get his ass kicked. So let me sit here and make sure that altercation doesn't happen in this realm. So I'm able to observe those things because I'm not spending all the time, okay, what type of tea did I want? Oh, this is the wrong tea. Oh, they don't have the right sweetener. Like all these different things that really create a lot of entanglement, let alone all the bullshit that's happening in the world that we're seeing at an old level, when it takes generations and generations of biology for us to be able to have an understanding about it. 100 years ago, we would just be worried about our people in our family were sick. Then during COVID, I'm worried about the people that edits my video, his family, but I'm also hearing random people online and celebrities. For most of my life, I don't know if it's changed. You would just hear celebrities when they died. Now you're hearing like TikTok people that I've never even watched their videos. I'm hearing when they're dying.
Interesting.
And so our biology, sometimes it takes generations and generations to catch up that, or sometimes lifetimes and lifetimes for us to catch up to that. And we're hearing all of this. So I create a way that and I like to see things in threes too. So I chunk everything into three pieces, and you can have 1,000 things in one of the three, but you got to chunk it and put it in a different situation. And a lot of times when I see something's happening twice or so, then I create some sort of image that I'm just putting it in that box, that so I don't have to like, okay, why did this person die or during COVID, since 6 feet apart, wear the mask so you don't get splashed on, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I know they're trying to make us fearful.
Sure, yeah.
So don't be fearful. That was the only thing. So I would not watch the news, and the only time I'd be watching the news when I was going over to check on my parents. And when I would go over there, I would see it, and I was like, man, they're watching it 24/7. 24/7 is an exaggeration, but it's not totally an exaggeration. They probably had it on when they're sleeping too, but they're watching it a lot of period of time. And my mom at one point said, it doesn't affect me like it affects you. And I was like, yes, that might be true, but I'm comparing it to when we go over and chill with the ducks, and we're feeding the ducks. When you're that happy, you don't get that same frequency when you're when it's on the news. So
Yeah.
I kind of I went on a tangent for like a long period of time.
He does that though.
Yes.
We're all aware.
My family's from Babylon. Babylon. They're not really yet. That was a joke.
I would love to go back to what you mentioned around rules, because I feel like a lot of individuals can really resonate with that, and the changing world that we're moving into, especially one where you're standing in your sovereignty and still in connection to community, because I've said that before in a prior session that we've had, that being in one's sovereignty doesn't disconnect you from community or the rest of the people. And so I'm thinking about this idea of rules. And I've moved away from using that term for a really long time, specifically even in a lot of the work that I've done in community with education and in classrooms and with teachers, and working with them to create a culture, a norm for students to be able to come in and really learn and receive. And we would talk about rules and say, like, okay, well, let's break this down. Like, what is a rule and why do we have it in place? And so I've moved away from rules, and instead I like using the idea or the term of agreements, right? Because agreements are a collective, it's about the collective. Versus rule, it's about authority, and it's about control, and it's about order, and it's about all these things, compliance. Whereas agreements are about community building. It's about having a common understanding so that everyone can tap in and feel successful, feel a part of a community, feel a part of something. And with adults and children, I would always recommend, don't create agreements and tell children what they are, because then they're just another form of rules. You're just using a different word. Agreements have to be participatory. So
it's human instinct to break rules too.
Well, I wonder why. I wonder why. Maybe it's an instinctual, innate knowing that we are sovereign, and freedom and liberty, the liberty to have the ability to do what we innately want to do, is something that's really, really strong. It's a really strong energy. But yeah, like this idea of rules, and like, are we moving through the world aware of the changes from a lens of rules, or are we moving through the world through the lens of our own innate power and capacities, our strengths, our abilities, our innate desire to grow, and what can we agree on? What can we agree on so that we can move through the changes, with others, as opposed to like somehow separated from the whole, because that causes a lot of unwellness in people, feeling like they're not connected or a part of something than just themselves.
That's one of the things with me following the 3 rules when I go into a room, because you're tapping into the culture and the thing that you can do.
That's what I was going to say.
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So in tune.
But also what it's doing, and it's not the same every time, but also what it's doing, and it's more of a test than a cool thing. Like, I have like people come to me and they're like, it's like, oh, this barista is making me wear shoes and everything, or they get on me about this, and then I'm just like thinking, as I'm talking, I was like, yeah, I just walk barefoot through here all the time.
You're just noticing it today.
Yeah, I walk through it all the time, but the baristas never say anything to me.
Yeah.
It's because I'm in that realm. And I give weed to the people that work in there. There's just like so many rules. There's so many rules that I break. And people might say, oh, you just because you give them weed. But I was able to do that at a lot of different places that I just go in there for a short period of time. That I ended up not wearing shoes. I'm able to do it. I used to be stronger. That used to be my thing. I used to be stronger on that until after COVID. Then when COVID happened, I was like, okay, that was one of my negotiations. I'll say, okay, because it would trigger people to a high level, I just said I'm just not going to do that because I don't want to get in a fight over the fact of my shoes and everything like that. It's not that important to me. I can just go and hang out on the grass like after I'm at the coffee shop, or leave here earlier and go ahead and do that, or even go outside of the coffee shop. They have places that you can do that.
I felt like that about wearing a mask. During that time, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it because I don't want to trigger anyone.
Yeah.
Let me just comply with what everyone's agreeing with.
I did the minimum as possible with the mask.
Yeah. I want to link this back to like all of the things we've been talking about and skills and strategies for a changing world. The changes that we're moving into, I would say like a really valuable skill that I would encourage everyone who's watching to start considering and refining is a skill that we like to call in the world of cultural psychology
drinking water? Oh,
yes, definitely. Being culturally responsive. So what does that mean? That means that we are aware of our own norms, the things that we prefer, our beliefs, and acknowledge that someone else is going to have their own beliefs and preferences. And if I want to engage with someone else, I need to be able to be responsive to whatever nuances might be the same or different than my own. And so to be culturally responsive includes a lot of different skill sets, including a lot of the things that Steve has been sharing with us today around observing,
I'm
around
culturally
really being
responsive?
Yes, you're very culturally responsive.
Look at that.
And really thinking about how are we being present in any given moment with someone, whether we assume that they're the same or not. Being responsive is also about that attunement. So is someone talking about this topic and like I'm over here listening and then I just bring up a whole different topic that's completely different than that's not being responsive, right? That person might not necessarily feel like you're listening. So culturally responsive isn't about communication per se, but it could be. It's about all those other little nuances around how can we like be in tune with someone's culture. And that as a skill set for a changing world is so beneficial. And really thinking about how we can be with the world, of the world, not just experiencing the world. And it requires practice. And most importantly, it requires humility. Because if you think you're right about everything, you definitely aren't. And you have a lot of room to grow. And that's great. It's great. We live in a very multicultural world, especially here in California. We're really, really diverse. And of course, California, we're so complex as we have so many different microcultures here. But even here in San Diego, where I'm currently living, we are so very diverse here. And to be culturally responsive in one situation might not be culturally responsive in another situation. And in order to be really a mentor or a model for others on how to move more fluidly through the changing nature of life and the world, is to practice the skill of being culturally responsive.
I speak hippie. I speak military guy. But I've learned over time to be able to keep my identity as I'm talking to the two. It's interesting. A military guy one time told me that I was the exact opposite of him. But he meant it as a compliment. He didn't mean it in a and I was like I don't see that. I mean, because I see myself as a hippie that was raised by a military man. Sure. And a lot of hippies don't like me because I'm a doer. And I don't want to just complain about the problems, because they a lot of times they want to keep, and I'm generalizing, but they want to keep
because
their
I'm a hippie too.
they want to keep their problems alive just so they can complain about it. They don't want to solutionize on the back end of it, and a lot of times they'll push people out of the projects because they actually want to follow through on that because they have some realm that they want to be the next Gandhi to the whole thing. So I'm sitting there, I want to complain about it and do that. So a lot of times I just see myself as that, and I've had this conversation with a lot of military people. I'm just like, I'm not pro war, but I like support the military people and everything. And
Sure.
sometimes they'll say that it's like, oh, nobody's pro war. I was like, I don't know about that. but yeah, and they're trained for that. There's lots of things going into that. I wince when I got a guy fresh out of high school that's saying he's going into the military or he's going to the recruiting office and everything. I was like, I wish I could provide a space that I could put his life in a different timeline.
Yes.
But at this point in
totally
time, I don't have the time and the
understand
resources for that.
Yeah.
To that realm because sometimes they might have not applied themselves in school, so this is the option that they have. There's always more options, but I don't necessarily have the time to persuade them to the situation that they came to this. A lot of times they don't know what they're signing up for in that realm, but going back to there's always a solution, there's always an answer, there's always a way out of stuff. There's always somebody that maybe they got lucky, but there's always somebody that went through something that was a lot worse than you. And there's always a way out of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's a chute, not a ladder.
For sure. A lot of times it's a chute, not a ladder. But if we stay open, we might have those beautiful moments where it feels like a miracle, or it feels just like, whoa, I just got like upgraded 1,000,000 times. But we always work for it, so
Work and play.
yeah, for sure.
Peace. Until next time.
This was great. Yeah, until next time.